What if the American dream is actually the American nightmare?
Tonight, several developing stories as we come on the air.
Where is Kate Middleton?
While there are relatively safe towns where you can still send your kids out to play for hours and not worry about them, there are some cities in the United States where you should definitely keep your loved ones close, because the chances of being a victim of a crime are quite high. Welcome back to FinnaTravel. Today we're going over the most dangerous cities in the United States. Every year, the FBI releases crime statistics on violent crimes and property crimes. And while most lists out there rank cities on violent crimes only, murder, assault, battery, etc., we combine them to show the overall danger and also take into account the economy and poverty levels, which play a part in the likelihood of random crimes. Number 10. Kansas City, Missouri. Well, it's no surprise that Kansas City is on the list, and the latest shooting after the Super Bowl victory for the Chiefs paints a telling story about the crime in this city. In the early 20th century, John Latzia, or Brother John, played a significant role in the establishment of organized crime that took hold in Kansas City. His ruthless tactics and connections with the Kansas City police and city administration cemented his influence, allowing crime to breed. It was so bad, the FBI actually established a presence here, making it one of the Bureau's earliest outposts. It's still bad to this day, with one of the worst neighborhoods for crime being the South Blue Valley, which has a high percentage of poverty. Today, there are 509,000 people in the city, and the crime rate is 63 per 1,000 residents, which is significantly higher than the national average, and it means you have a 1 in 16 chance of becoming a victim of a crime. Number 9. Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is a pretty great city when it's not freezing cold in the dead of winter, and when you stick to safer neighborhoods. If you're into music and art, there are concerts and events year-round that draw in a lot of people each year. I've been to Minneapolis a couple of times for conferences and other events and felt relatively comfortable. But to be fair, that was long before they cut the budget and joined the list of cities that defunded their police department due to social pressure. So if you take a trip to Minneapolis, maybe stick clear of Midtown Phillips, which consistently ranks as the most dangerous neighborhood in the city. Poverty, homelessness, and gang activities are key players in the continuation of crime. There are approximately 421,700 people living in Minneapolis, and they have a crime rate of 66 per 1,000 people, giving you a 1 in 15 chance of falling victim to a violent or property crime. Number 8. Detroit, Michigan. There's a lot of crime in Detroit, and no, it's not just auto theft, even though they are known as Motor City, and about 1.8 million cars are produced here each year. That's about 3 cars per person, since there are 626,800 people living here. Detroit is a major industrial city, employing a lot of lower-income jobs and has a steep poverty level, which contributes significantly to the high levels of crime. Some distant relatives of mine lived about 100 miles from Detroit, and they felt very unsafe when needing to travel to the airport. Probably one of the biggest tells, though, is the fact that Detroit filed for Chapter 9 bankruptcy in July of 2013. It was the largest municipal bankruptcy filing in the history of the United States, with more than $18 billion of debt. The economic and social decline of Detroit, along with the high crime rates, make this city a dangerous place to be, at least in neighborhoods like Belmont. The overall crime rate is 66 per 1,000 residents, giving you a 1 in 15 chance of being a crime victim. Number 7. Little Rock, Arkansas. I have to be honest, I was a bit shocked when I was reviewing the stats and came across Little Rock, Arkansas. I would not have guessed any city in the natural state would make this list of the most dangerous cities in America, but I was wrong. It's the 3rd most dangerous as far as violent crimes go and 16th when it comes to property crime. Aside from the large number of violent crimes, auto thefts are also very high in Little Rock, so make sure you lock your doors and secure any valuables you may be traveling with when stopping in Little Rock, especially in the Geyer Springs neighborhood. There's just over 200,000 people in this city, and the crime rate is 72 per 1,000 people, giving you a 1 in 14 chance of being a victim of a crime. There's nothing natural about this capital city's crime rates. Number 6. Denver, Colorado. After the protests following the death of George Floyd during the COVID-19 pandemic, Denver was one of those cities that changed the police response and cut some funding. This decision led to a sharp increase in property crimes in the city of Denver, especially in more upscale neighborhoods. But thankfully, this idea didn't last long, as some council members that voted to defund the police ended up voting to fund the police force again. For the 2023 budget, Mayor Mitchell Hancock proposed $611 million, a new record amount of money on police, fire, and jail services because, you guessed it, crime continues to rise. It is true that some crime rates were slightly lower in 2023 as a result of extra spending, but not by much. As with any city, there are definitely safer areas, so we suggest you avoid the Central Business District or Union Station, the Civic Center, which includes the state capitol and surrounding areas, and Capitol Hill. With just over 700,000 residents, the crime rate is 74 per 1,000 people, giving you a 1 in 13 chance of being a victim of a crime. Number 5. Oakland, California. Oakland's neighboring city of San Francisco is expensive, so many folks continue to move out of that big city and settle in Oakland. But what they don't realize is that they're getting what they pay for. Violent crime in Oakland is more than double what it is in San Francisco per capita, while property crime is relatively the same. Of course, it has its charms as well, and I've personally driven through Oakland a few times. It's an urban city with a nice mix of waterfront views and rolling hills, and also tends to bring in its fair share of fans year-round as the home of the Oakland Athletics. But with only 428,000 people in Oakland, the crime rates are not something to ignore. Crime in this city is more than 3 times the national average at 81 per 1,000 people, making your chances of falling victim to a crime only 1 in 12. Number 4. Pueblo, Colorado. Pueblo may seem like an odd one to be on this list, and many of you might be thinking, who's even heard of Pueblo? Probably not that many, because only 112,600 people live in this city, and it's literally the smallest city on our list today. But that makes its crime stats all the more jarring. It does, however, bear the reputation as the home of heroes, because it boasts the highest per capita rate of Medal of Honor recipients. Even President Eisenhower famously remarked, "What is it? Something in the water out there in Pueblo? All you guys turn out to be heroes." I guess it's just like the movies, where there's more heroes, there's more crime. Now, the local residents hate that they're on this list at all, and you'll see angry comments trying to deny the stats, but numbers don't lie. The Devil's Triangle on the east side of this city is probably the most prolific for gang activity and violent crime. Like Oakland, the crime rate is 81 per 1,000 people, giving you a 1 in 12 chance of being a victim to a crime. Number 3. St. Louis, Missouri. I lived in Missouri and Illinois for a number of years, so I often pass through the gateway to the west. Although, my one regret is never having visited the Arch. It's on my list of things to do when I go back for a visit, but I'll be sure to stay in a safer part of town. Before we get into the crime stats, there's a lesser-known fact about St. Louis that you might find interesting. It boasts a surprising number of firsts in American history. It was the first city in America to have a public kindergarten in 1873, the first U.S. city to host the modern Olympics in 1904, and it's credited with being the starting point for the first interstate highway system in the United States. It's a good thing it's also not first in crime, but it sure is close. With 286,053 people living in St. Louis, and crime rates of 87 per 1,000 people, your chances of being a victim are 1 in 11. If you do go here, steer clear of Peabody-Darst Webb, as the violent crime here is 142% higher than the rest of the city. Don't say I didn't warn you. Number 2. Tacoma, Washington. Tacoma. Have you ever driven through Tacoma? There's a distinct odor that I've never smelled anywhere else before, and it's often dubbed the aroma of Tacoma. An old friend of mine once referred to it as the armpit of Washington. He's not wrong, it stinks. And so does their culture, streets, overall attitude, and even the crime here. They aren't number 2 on the list for no reason. Property crime here is astronomical, and the police do absolutely nothing about it, which is why their numbers are so high. They hold the unfortunate distinction of having the highest property crime rate per capita in the entire nation. Just last summer, a relative of mine had all his tools stolen out of his secure garage where he was working on a construction project. And this was in a relatively safe area of town. One business owner even recently tried to set up his new restaurant and bar and was robbed 6 times in as many months, no matter what efforts he took to secure the premises. Since the police were no help, he robbed them back at gunpoint to get his equipment and tools back. It's like they're breeding crime here. Tacoma has 219,027 people, and there are 100 crimes for every 1,000 people. So your chances of being a victim are 1 in 10. Quick note before we jump into number 1, as with any city, there are going to be some areas that are safer than others. We did our best to highlight the most dangerous areas so that you can avoid them altogether. Number 1. Memphis, Tennessee. Welcome to the most dangerous city in America, Memphis, Tennessee. Not only are the violent crimes in Memphis the highest per capita in America, its population is also declining, making the safety of the city something very hard to achieve as the crime rate continues to rise. Most people are content to think of Memphis as the birthplace of rock and roll and remember the greats like Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, and Jerry Lee Lewis. But like Beale Street, I'ma just refer to Memphis as the home of the blues and keep my family far away from this town, even if the first Piggly Wiggly was started here. It just ain't worth the risk. If you have to pass through, try not to stop in downtown Memphis, as it's known to be one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in America, with crime rates as much as 890% above the national average. Most of the crime is gang-related, and Memphis has over 100 gangs throughout the city, according to some sources. With a population of 630,027 people, Memphis has over 98 crimes per 1,000 people. And that is a little bit less than Tacoma. But because the violent crimes are so much higher than Tacoma, Memphis gets number 1. This leaves you with a 1 in 10 chance of being a victim. If you live in any of these cities, how safe do you feel? And have you or anyone you know been a victim of a crime? Let us know in the comments below. If you got any value out of today's video, then we did our job. We hope you enjoy our content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.